Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we are continuing our look at the Darksteel set and we are looking at Mindswarm, which is a mono-black deck. So let's look at the deck list quickly. 20 creatures, 8 artifacts, 2 enchantments, 5 sorceries, 4 instants, 21 land. Mana curve off to the side there. Let's start looking at some of the creatures. So the strategy of the deck, I guess it's kind of like a black weenie deck with kind of like a discard sub-theme. We'll see how well it does that. In my mind, not great, but we'll take a look. So selection of black creatures here. So we have 3 Chittering Rats, 3 mana for a 2/2. When it comes into play, an opponent puts a card from their hand on top of their library. That I think is pretty good. I think in some cases that's usually better than discard, because if you make them put a card back on top of their library, you're locking them out of a new card. You know, if like the card they draw at the start of their turn is their only draw that turn, it's essentially like sort of like a time walk effect. So yeah, pretty good effect I think to have like on a 3-drop creature like this, and it's a 2/2 as well. So Chittering Rats actually I think is one of the better creatures in this deck. 2 Emissary of Despair, so it's 3 mana for a 2/1 fly, which is not a great rate. Has this extra ability though, if it deals combat damage to a player, they lose 1 life for every artifact they control. It's not great that it's dependent on something that you can't control, which is your opponent having artifacts. But I think, if this hits and it gets an extra, I don't know, 1 or 2 life out of them, I think it's not awful. It definitely could be worse, I think. Grimclaw oh god, that's hard to say. Grimclaw Bats is definitely, I think, not great. 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer. So like immediately not wonderful. And then it has like this pump effect that you have to pay life for, which is, I mean, I guess you could argue it's kind of like aggressively costed, like it's a flyer with like this shade ability, but like you still have to pay mana for it. So I mean, I understand why you have to pay mana as well. I understand why it's not just pay life, because this could potentially then be like, like a turn 2, turn 3 kill, potentially. Because you would just swing and be like, I go pay 19 life and instantly win. So I understand why it's not that way. But I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, it could have been like +2/+2 for that effect. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the bats. And then a single Slith Bloodletter. This is the black Slith in the cycle. Kind of the same as all the other Sliths. It starts off very weak, gets counters if it manages to do damage to a player, and this one has regeneration for only 2, which is okay. It's fine, I guess. Moving on, we've got some slightly bigger creatures. So we have a Scavenging Scarab. This is just plain bad. 4 mana for a 3/3 that can't block. I mean, like 4 mana for a 3/3 with no abilities is Hill Giant stats, which was underwhelming at the time anyway. So then to tack on a drawback is like really bad. So this definitely would have been one of the first cards you take out. I have no idea why it's so bad. Other than, I suppose, we keep forgetting these theme decks are meant to be introductory products, I suppose, for new players. So they would pick this up, see this card, be like, oh, even I as a new player can recognize that's not good, so I should replace it with another card. So in that regard, it serves that purpose. But I've never been keen on this kind of philosophy on making bad cards on purpose. I don't know. So one of the rares of the deck is Mephitic Ooze. So it's 5 mana for a 0/5. Gets +1/+0 for every artifact you control. And you've got a decent number of artifacts in the deck. And it basically has Death Touch. It's kind of underwhelming, honestly, as a rare. I would expect this as like uncommon. Nothing about it really jumps out as being rare, because like it's still like 5 mana, so it's not like you're getting it for like a really good rate. If it was like 2 or 3 mana, yeah, sure. But yeah, I just think it's kind of underwhelming, honestly. Of course, the 2 abilities don't really synergize with each other, because like the higher the power, the less relevant the Death Touch ability is, because then you would just be killing things with your high power anyway. So yeah, kind of underwhelming, Mephitic Ooze. Single Nim Replica, 3 mana for a 3/1. Has an ability where you can pay 3, sack it to give a creature -1/-1 turn. Like, not awful. Not great, but not awful. I honestly wish, Scavenging Scarab, this had just been another one of these, another Nim Replica, but, and then 3 Dross Golems. These I think are okay. 5 mana for 3/2. It has affinity for swamps, so every swamp you control, it's 1 less to play. And it has Fear. which not so strong in Mirrodin block just because there's a lot of artifact creatures kicking around. But I think this is perfectly fine. Ideally you would be able to play this like on turn 3 for only 2 mana. That's not terrible, is it? Clockwork Vorak. This is it's a 0/0 with trample. Comes in with 4+1/+1 counters on it. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you take a counter off it, and it can tap to put a counter back on itself. Kind of slow and bad, I think, because this thing, like, even even if it didn't have this ability where if it attacked or blocked, it lost a counter, it would still only be like a 4/4 trample for 5, which is, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not very exciting. The best use of this probably would be to play it and then spend a few turns, I guess, building it up with counters and then attack when it's bigger, but then you pay this turn 5, and then you wait until like turn 7, turn 8 to attack with it? No, I don't think so. I would take this out. I think it's along with the ooze, I think it's the most expensive creature in the deck. And then 4 Leaden Mers. These are perfectly fine. 2 mana, taps to give you black mana. Yep, perfectly fine. Leaden Mer, full playset of those, which is always nice. Moving on to the non-creature spells, so we have 2 Relic Banes. So this is an aura that goes on artifacts, and then the enchanted artifact at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 2 life. Yep, that's fine. Put it on an opponent's artifact and it slowly chips away at them. Yeah, not awful. Fine way of getting fine way of getting damage on them. And like you're in a block where there's artifact lands, so this would have been okay because you put it on artifact creature. You can, people can play kind of a bit recklessly to kind of get rid of it and maybe get rid of the aura. But if you put it on a land, that's a lot harder to get rid of. Some black removal spells. So 2 Murderous Spoils. This is very expensive. 6 mana instant. Destroy a non-black creature. It can't be regenerated, and you gain control of equipment that was attached to it. So potentially, like, quite a good payoff, but so expensive. And I just feel like, I don't know, there'd be moments, again, like going back to maybe a new player, they'd hold on to this thing, like hoping to get like that ideal situation where like, oh, they're going to attack with a really overcooked creature and I'll kill it and I'll get all their stuff, and maybe don't play it when you need to play it. I don't know. So maybe a little bit of a skill test card there. 2 Terrors, classic Terror, getting reprinted here, which is nice. Not so useful, I don't think, in Mirrodin. Again, just because there's a lot of artifact creatures around, so it doesn't have too many targets. But it's fine. It's fine. Single Essence Drain. This is just expensive and kind of bad. 5 mana sorcery to do 3 to a creature or play, and you gain 3. It's just not very impressive, and it's just kind of expensive. I suppose if you're being aggressive with the other creatures, like this could potentially be a finisher, maybe, I guess. But not too impressed with it. Pulse of the Dross. So we're sort of like now starting to edge into like the discard sub-theme of the deck. So this is a very underwhelming rare as well, honestly. So 3 mana, player reveals 3 cards from their hand. You choose one of them, they discard it, and then if they have more cards in hand than you get Pulse the Dross back so you can cast again, which you think is good. But you're making them discard cards, so then they're likely to either have the same or fewer cards in hand than you because you're making them discard, and you've got other cards in here that make them discard. So this is really unlikely to get a repeat casting. It has its recursion ability has anti-synergy with its effect. So all these pulses are really unimpressive, and unfortunately, I think all the at least 2 of the Darksteel, no, 3 of them, because the Master Blaster had one as well. So Master Blaster, this one, and the next one, the Swarm and Slam, all have one of these pulses, the one of their rares, and they're just very disappointing, I think. Well, not disappointing, just not. I just don't think they're worth being rare, but anyway. So we said there was the discard sub-theme, so we've got 3 Wrench Mines. This is pretty good as a discard spell, I think. 2 black mana. A player discards 2 unless they discard an artifact, which is, I think that's perfectly fine. That's a pretty scary spell, I think, to drop on the second turn. Potentially make someone discard 2. Or even just discarding an artifact, which again can happen if you're playing these decks kind of against each other. There's maybe a lot of artifacts, but I think Wrench Mind is a pretty good discard spell. 2 Geth's Grimoire, so it's 4 mana artifact. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you draw a card. I think this is okay. You don't have too many discard effects really in the deck, but this would have been fine, to buy this deck and then disassemble it, use this somewhere else, like in a deck using like Megrim and Mind Rots and all that kind of Spectres, that kind of thing. The thing with discards, of course, you make someone discard all their cards, like eventually all your cards that say, and you force them into top deck mode, eventually your cards that say they discard a card kind of peter out in usefulness, because if you force someone to top deck, you can't make them. I don't know, but I'm going as like discard is kind of not a fun strategy, and it has its flaws. Single skeleton shard, so 3 mana artifact, 3 or a black and tap, return an artifact creature from your graveyard to your hand. You don't actually have that many artifact creatures in this set. You have the Myr, you have the Dross Golem, the Vorak, and I think that's about it. So there's actually not too much for this to do in this deck, so I think this could have been served being another card, honestly. And then 2 Spectre Shroud to continue the discard theme, so 2 mana equipment, gives the equipped creature +1 power, and whenever they do combat damage to a player, the player discards a card, and it has quite a cheap equip cost. So I mean, like, even if that even that discard effect doesn't go off, at least it's giving a power boost. At least it's a cheap equip cost. It's all right. It's all right. And then we just have a few other equipment here. So Leonin Bowler, which just you unattach it to tap a creature, okay. And then Leonin Scimitar and a Bone Split, which is kind of like very basic. But just because they're basic equipment doesn't mean they're not good, because they are pretty good, honestly. Like, just to give +1/+1 or +2/0, these are both pretty good. And then 4 Vault of Whispers, because it's a Mirrodin block preconstructed deck, so ideally we want artifact lands, and again, a full playset is really nice. So it could have been. I'm not overwhelmed really by the card selection in this deck. I think it's actually pretty weak, honestly. I think there was definitely some better options. Like the rares are really weak, so let's talk about maybe alternate rares first. So Shriveling Rot I thought would be okay. This is like a black entwine spell, so it has 2 modes, and if you pay the entwine cost, you get to do both. So it either makes any amount of damage lethal for the whole board for the turn, or whenever a creature dies that turn, the controller loses life equal to toughness. And I thought, I don't know, you've got like kind of a lot of small creatures in here. This helps them kind of punch up, maybe. Heartseeker I thought might be okay as well. It's kind of an expensive equipment, but it just has like a very simple, straightforward, and decent effect, which is just unattach it, destroy a creature. I mean, yeah, that's all right. You're essentially then paying 5 mana for a repeatable kill spell, which I think is perfectly fine. And then other cards here. Echoing Decay is like a kill spell, gives -2/-2 to a creature and every creature that has the same name as it, which is okay. There's a few token creatures going around, so I think even without that it's okay. Barter and Blood just makes everyone sacrifice 2 creatures, which is alright. Screams Within is an aura that gives a creature -1/-1, but then if they die, the Screams from Within comes back and it goes on to another creature, which is really good. It just never goes away. Consume Spirit, I have no idea why it's not in this deck. It's a mono black deck and it doesn't use Consume Spirit, which is an X spell where you can only spend black mana on it, and it's just like it just deals X damage and you gain X life. Yeah, no idea why it's not in here. And Flayed Nim, I just thought, it's a pretty cool creature. It has like a kind of a fun effect and it has regeneration. It's okay. So in summary, I think this one's kind of weak. Not bad. I don't think you could play it, I think, and it would play fine, but I think it would feel kind of a bit underpowered, honestly. Like it would definitely work, but I think this is one you'd maybe play it once and then you'd look to upgrade it as quickly as possible, because I say the card selection here is not wonderful. But that's just my opinion after looking at the deck. What did you think of the deck after seeing the contents? Did you have this deck and did you play it? Did you make any changes to it? Please stick a comment below. I'd really like to hear what you think. But I'll be back next time to look at another Darksteel pre-constructed deck. But until then, thank you for watching and listening, and have a good day.